Well, I hope you're having a good day, and today I'm going to make a video on how to reshape a hat or how to shape one in general. And I'll start off with, if you've got one you just need to tweak a little bit, I'll show you how to do that. Show you some tricks on if it's a little too tight, if it's way too tight, if it's too small, and then we'll go into totally working one over, totally overhauling a hat. So if you want to learn about that, that's what I'm up to today. For starters, and to make this video easier, if you don't know anything about cowboy hats, I'll kind of explain the things about a cowboy hat you need to know. So I'll just use this one that we're gonna do a total overhaul on. So this part of the cowboy hat up here is called the crown, and they come in different heights. If you ever get one custom made or something, they'll ask that. Now, something interesting about this hat is it has these eyelets in it, and that tells me this is kind of old. When I was a kid back in the 80s and 90s, felt hats with eyelets like this were pretty popular, and then you don't see them anymore. And like I said, I got this on eBay. It's a Beaver brand hat. I didn't know that when I got that. That's a pretty nice brand of hats. They don't make them anymore, but like I said, this is the crown. These are eyelets, and then this is your hat band on here. I'll be taking this off, but they usually come with one with kind of some, you know, pretend fancy looking buckles. And this is your brim. And then inside here, you've got your liner, which is usually silk with the logo of the company that made the hat. And then you have a sweatband. And when I first tried stuffing this one on my head after I got it, the sweatband ripped. So that tells me that this is, you know, kind of old, and I think it sat somewhere where it got kind of hot and this kind of just dry rotted. So I'm gonna have to take that out anyways. But yeah, those are the parts of a cowboy hat: your crown, your brim, you know, your liner, your sweatband. And something that I see a lot that people need to know is, you see this bow that's in here? This is in almost every cowboy hat I've ever seen. That's to show you that that goes to the back of your head. So when you put it on, that's got to go to the back. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a picture of somebody and they had a cowboy hat on backwards, and that's how you tell right there. And then this is a little deal, a little piece of paper that says what size it is. So them are the pieces and parts of a cowboy hat. Now for shaping one up, I'm just going to keep using this hat, and let's say you just wanted to tweak it a little bit. Like this is how it is, how it naturally sits. It's kind of goofy like that. So let's say I just want to, for instance, bring this down and make it a flat hat. Now, all of this stuff I'm going to talk about, these are all things you probably already got sitting around your house. And the first thing I'm going to use is an iron. It's got to have this setting where you can blast steam out of it. Now, you can do this with a tea kettle sitting on your stove and with steam coming out of it, but this is just a little bit quicker. So now I'm just going to work on shaping the brim up here a little bit just to show you how it works, and it's really easy. So I'm just going to blast steam, just say on this side. Let's say I'm just going to blast or steam this side and get it down. So I'm just going to go along here. It'll get pretty steamy. And the felt will get real nice and soft. And then I'm going to do the underside. I'm going to let it kind of build back up. And you'll see I've got some water dripping on there. Don't let that bother you. That's not going to hurt the hat at all. So we got some more on there. Got her pretty nice and steamed up. And now this has become pretty pliable. And you know, I could pull that down there like that before, but now it's going to stay that way. It kind of has a memory to it. And when this dries out, this will be the shape of it. This isn't going to be the shape of it when I'm done, but that's the shape of it for now. Now you saw how easy that worked, and as soon as this cools off and dries off, that'll be the shape of the hat. But obviously I'm going to overhaul this one and completely change it. But that's not something you want to do all the time. You don't want to constantly be steaming this and getting it all the way wet, or it'll get really floppy and raggy. So that's something to keep in mind when you're shaping your hat. You know, don't do this several times. This is kind of when we overhaul this, it's going to kind of be a 1 or 2 time deal, and then you get it wet too many times, it's going to ruin the hat altogether. Now for a little bit of tips and tricks. Now this hat is way too small for me, so I'll be showing you all kinds of ways to make this a little bit bigger, kind of one step at a time. So one thing is, let's say you steam your hat up, you get it shaped right, you wear it on your head, feels really good. That's a really good way to kind of custom fit it to your head. And if it works for you and everything's great, that's hunky-dory. But let's say you steam it up, stuff it on your head, feels like it's molded to your head, and everything's great. The next day you go to put it on, and it's just a little bit too dang tight. and it's uncomfortable, and you're like, dang, I don't, you steam it again, you don't want to steam it too many times, and it still just stays that way. Well, what they do in these hats is in this sweatband here, along here, you'll kind of see this rounded part, and they'll sew in either a piece of wire or this piece of plastic. And so when you steam it, that'll push into the felt, because the felt's soft, and it'll feel like it fits great. But then when everything dries and kind of stiffens up, that's what's keeping you from your hat from fitting good. So what you can do, and what I've done with this one, is you can come and back here where your sweatband meets, there's a little bit of a seam, or you can put a little nick in there, and then you can grab a hold of either that wire, or this one has plastic, and you can actually pull that out. So I get out my handy dandy Leatherman, and we'll pull that out. And it shouldn't be too difficult. So now that that's out, you can steam your hat again and stuff it back on your head, and it should work out for you and stay comfortable. That'll kind of help you if your hat's just a tiny bit too small. If it's just way too small and you're totally dead set against buying a new hat, you're probably just going to have to cut the sweatband out, which is what I'm going to do with this one anyways, so we'll go into that. Now, if your hat is a little bit too big, like this one isn't necessarily too big for me, but one thing you can do is this is a hat band. This is a beaded hat band. You can buy one of those, and this one has leather that ties on it, or ties it together. So you can tie that and just snug it up. Of course, you'd probably want to steam it a little bit and snug that up. But if that can't get your hat tight enough, another thing you can do is you can stuff some newspaper or paper towels underneath your sweatband here. It'll all kind of fold out like that, and you don't have to do it all the way around. You can just do it in the front or along the back and try that out. But that's kind of about all you can do to make one fit. So if it's just too big, you're just kind of out of luck and have to go get a new hat. I'm going to start overhauling this hat. So let's say you inherited your granddad's hat, and it's just his style wasn't your style, or it looks goofy like this one, and you want to completely overhaul it. I'm going to change the shape of the crown, the brim, and try to make it fit my head, take off this hat band and everything. So the first thing I've got to do is cut this sweatband out, and it's just stitched in there, so get you a sharp knife and cut along the threads here. I've already got this one started, but you'll just see where it's stitched in along here. So cut it out, and remember, some people might think this is sacrilegious, but if you ever want to wear the hat, you got to do something. And then these liners are just kind of glued in, so you can just grab them and give them a tug, and you'll get most of that out. There'll be a couple pieces, where the glue was, so you can get that all cleaned up. You might have to scrape, some of this glue out with your knife, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And but yeah, I've had several of these Beaver brand hats. That's their logo there. But they went out of business a while ago, and you can't find them anymore except for on eBay like this. So kind of a sad deal, but I'm going to do a little bit of work on getting any glue, and there's some of the thread that gets left in here. You got to pull all that out so it doesn't itch on your forehead, and then we'll get into shaping it up. Got the inside cleaned up kind of decent, and this hat band is just also held on by glue. These are just a piece of felt also, most of them are, with kind of some, this one kind of has some fancy gold buckles on it. I don't think the buckle would actually ever even be a real, yeah, it's just a fake buckle also. So, I mean, if you like it, you like the way it looks, keep it on there. If not, go ahead and get rid of it. It's no big deal. So I went through and I've got it pretty well cleaned up. Any chunks of glue I got scraped out. There is a lot of these little threads when you cut that sweatband out of there, so I don't have quite all of them out, but they're not bugging me right now when I stick it on my head. And this hat went from one that was, I'll show you, even though it looks ridiculous, went from one that I couldn't even get stuffed on my head. So let me take this one off and run my hands through my silky hair real quick. And now this one will fit, and it's almost going to be too big, but you can see now what a difference just taking that sweatband out made. But we definitely got to change the shape on that because that looks ridiculous. So here we go. Now what I'm going to do to this hat might be controversial, but I've done this to almost every hat that I've had. I've done it to lots of friends' hats. I've done it to this hat. What I'm going to go do is I'm going to go completely soak this in the bathtub. I'm going to get the water kind of warm, run this under the faucet till it's all the way wet, and then we'll get into shaping it. So here we go. The video of me soaking the hat in the bathtub didn't work out, and I apologize for that, but it's pretty simple. Turn your faucet on warm water, and then you're going to soak the whole hat, the top of the brim, the bottom of the brim, the outside of the crown, up into the inside of the crown, and soak it all. And I'm talking just like a minute, 2 minutes max, but just make sure everything's wet, all the way wet, and you'll feel it soften up. Now when it comes to picking out a shape, what you got to do is, you'll have one in mind. Like let's say you want to have Gus's hat from Lonesome Dove, that shape. You shape it just like that. If it looks great, that's fantastic. But it might not look good on you at all, and it has nothing to do with the hat or anything like that. It just probably has to do with the shape of your face, and I'm not saying that to be funny or something. But just try some different shapes out. You got plenty of time before it starts to stiffen back up. So just go ahead and experiment with all kinds of different crown shapes and brim shapes until you find the one you like, and you'll get it. So there you go. Now that you've gotten it wet, and warm water does work the best, this is when you can start tweaking it and trying out all the different types of shapes and figure out what looks good on you. You've got plenty of time, so go ahead and make sure you like the way it looks. A lot of the times it's hard to know where to start, whether you should start with the crown or with the brim, but I already kind of knew what I wanted to try, and so I'm basically kind of going for the Conager look, if you've ever seen that movie with Sam Elliott. And one thing that I'll say is you don't want to sit here and try to get it all symmetrical. You want to put it on, look in the mirror, and get it to where it looks good like that, because there's been lots of times I've shaped a hat and then I'll have it set in somewhere and look at it and I'll be like, dang, that's not symmetrical. One side's a little bit different than the other. But then I put it on and it looks decent, and so having it symmetrical standing here looking at like this isn't as important as it is looking good in the mirror. And you'll have some spots here, like right here, where the old hat shape or the old crease was, and I just take one hand and stick under there and then just kind of push it and work it out, and use both hands to kind of work all those out. And a lot of times there'll be some dirt or dust left on the ridges of those creases, and once you get that washed off or wiped off, it'll look good. So I've just about got this the way that I like it, and then we'll take a look and see and go on to the next step. I got her, and you can kind of see my finger moving under the hat there. I'm just getting out the last little spots where that old crease was, and then we'll try her on for one of the last times and work on the brim. As far as shaping the brim, just having it brought up a little bit on each side and down in the front a little, nothing too fancy. So I'm going to try it on again in the mirror here and see how it looks. And I'm out here kind of working on shaping it, and you just kind of want to do a little bend here. You might just kind of have to hold it. It's kind of like playing with Play-Doh. You just kind of work at it a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. You might have to kind of hold it to get it to take the shape, but you don't ever have to go too hog wild. Once you start messing around with it and playing it and feeling it, you'll figure out real quick how much pressure and how long you have to hold something. And there's not really much to it at all. It's just kind of like shaping Play-Doh, and the actual shaping of it is pretty easy. So just kind of work at it and you'll feel it, and you'll get it there. And you might have to push on it and bend on it a little bit more than you feel comfortable, but just as long as you never crease a spot, and create a weak spot there is what'll happen if I was to just take and almost pinch that down and crease it, then right there on the ridge of that crease would be a weak spot, and it would eventually probably break, and then you'd have a tear in your hat. So the actual shaping of it is just little movements like that, and you don't ever want to go too much more than that, going hog wild or anything. But yeah, it's pretty easy, the actual shaping of it. It's the preparation and getting it to where you can shape it. That's mostly what this video is about, because shaping it is your personal preference, the shape that you want to get. There's no art form or thing to get the certain shape that you want. You just got to work at it. So here it is. Brought it out here in the sunlight to kind of do a 360 of it, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't look too bad. It went from something that I wouldn't be caught dead wearing to something I would wear to a branding pin or whatever. So the next step, I think I'm going to make a hat band for it. So let's go get started on that. All right, so now I'm back in the tack room, and I'm going to make a hat band for it. So I got some of this kind of wine-colored ribbon at the store. I'm kind of cheating here. I had a custom hat made once, and they mailed it to me with this styrofoam cutout inside of it. So that'll make it kind of easier to hold this and not mess up the shape too much to put this ribbon on it. But I saw a guy do this once, and he just used, a pair of scissors and a hot glue gun. So I want the hat band to be kind of snug so it doesn't fall off, but not so snug that it makes the hat too tight, which I don't think I'll have a problem with this. So got a hot glue gun and my Leatherman with my scissors on it here, and a lighter. So I've already kind of measured how long I need this to be. So, and I know with this ribbon it'll fray, so I gotta have a lighter here to kind of melt these ends. So I'm gonna go on ahead and wrap this around to the length that I want to use it, and then use the hot glue gun to glue it in place. I think I got it the right length, and now for this spot where I glued it, I'm going to make a bow to put around there. And just what I'm going to do is cut one piece that wraps around this way and glue it, and then a piece that has a bow on this end and a bow on that end, and have that underneath that piece that I'll wrap. So I guess the way I'll do it, I'll cut a piece that'll have loops on each end here and here and glue that down, and then to cover it all up, I'll have another piece that wraps around it to cover up where all these seams are. So get started on that. Here's the bow. I've got it glued on this side, and I'll glue it here on the hat band. And there is a shiny side and a not shiny or matte side on this, so I'm trying to do the shiny side out, but there we go. Wraps around right there. All right, and there's the finished product. Looks pretty good for using a Leatherman and a hot glue gun and a lighter. So get it on the hat and see how it looks. Got this ribbon hat band on here, and I kind of changed the shape of my hat doing that, so I need to go in the mirror and fix it again, but I don't really like the way this looks. It's a little too flashy for me, so I've got a different one I'm going to try on there and see how that looks. All right, well, I got it on here, and I think it looks pretty good. It's a little bit kind of loose in spots, so I think wearing it'll get it to fill in those spots here along the hat band, but I think I like the way it looks, so maybe we'll go outside and see how it looks out in the natural daylight. Well, here's what she looks like out in the natural daylight. I think it turned out pretty good. Taking a hat from something that I couldn't even get to fit on my head, and even if I could, I wouldn't wear it out in public, to something that I'd wear. So yeah, it's still a tiny bit loose, from getting it wet. So I might have to put a stampede string on it. I'll have to wait and see what it's like tomorrow. But probably do a video on how to do that. Pretty easy. So yeah, I hope you learned something from this, and maybe if you've got an old hat sitting around that you really like but never could get to fit on your head, or maybe it fit on your head great but you didn't like the shape of it, you can go on ahead and give this a try. So yeah, thanks for watching. Alright, so now that I'm here in the pickup, I'm going to kind of go do some dinking around. But when you get it that wet, it'll take a little while to dry. So periodically through the day, you might bump it and stuff, but I know it's kind of vain, but you're going to kind of want to look in a mirror and just make sure that everything is still the way you like it, and tweak it a little bit here and there, because you can still kind of change the shape a little bit. But as it dries, that's going to go away, and you'll end up being stuck with it the way it is. So just just check on it every once in a while, especially if you bump into something, and make sure it's still the shape you like.